In this video, I want to help you understand what you experience in relationships by giving you a really quick overview of the topic of attachment style. Now, attachment style was for me a massive game changer in understanding how I showed up in relationships and how I could actually change my experience in relationships. When we look at attachment style, there's basically 4 different types of attachment people develop. One of those styles is secure, and 3 of those styles are what we call insecure. It means that these people hold some kinds of insecurities that show up repeatedly in relationships. I like to use the metaphors by Stan Tatkin, and so we talk about the secure type of attachment being the anchor, and the insecure styles being either the island or the wave or the combination of those two. The different attachment styles fall along a spectrum of anxiety and avoidance. So when we talk about the secure anchor type of style, they are low on both anxiety and avoidance. These people tend to show up confidently and very self-secured in relationships. They know what they want. They're good at communicating their needs and their boundaries, and they tend to move relationships forward in a natural progression. So they're not afraid of commitment, they're not afraid of conflict, and they do what it takes to move through each stage of the relationship. In contrast to these, we have our island and our wave style. The wave style is high on anxiety, which means they're often afraid that they will be abandoned, they will lose their partner, they will lose the relationship. The wave style tends to also be very good at communicating. However, there's one difference here is they tend to overshare. They share too much information too soon in a relationship. And they do this because they want that connection as quickly as possible. They want the person to like them because they depend on external validation for their own self-worth. Now, in relationships, the wave person wants to move things forward. They want the honeymoon to last forever. And when the honeymoon starts to end, they start to question the relationship, whether the person even loves them and what's happened. Now, on the flip side, their partners tend to feel them as very needy and clingy. They feel like they're rushing the relationship forward. They may have told them that they love them after the 2nd or 3rd date. And so this can be quite overwhelming for somebody with either a anchor or a wave attachment style. When we look at the island style of attachment, these people love to spend a lot of time alone. They tend to pull themselves more out of relationships than go into relationships. They often believe they don't need a relationship. They may have been single for many, many years or decades because the fear of being in a relationship actually outweighs the feeling that they get of being alone. Actually, they don't even describe themselves as lonely because they enjoy mostly their own company. They don't like to depend on other people, and they're not very good at asking for help or even receiving help when it's offered to them. When we look at partners in relationship with islands, they tend to describe their partners as being emotionally unavailable, cold, slow to warm up, very difficult to reach. And they do often tend to sort of disengage from relationships by focusing on creature comfort. So they may do a lot of watching television, gaming, some kind of hobby that really is about being alone and pulls them out of this connection. The underlying fear of the island attachment style is that they will get lost or they will be suffocated in a relationship. And so for them, it's important to keep this distance. And then our 4th style is a combination of this island and wave. We call this the fearful style, and it's because these people often have a great fear of relationships. They have a fear of being dependent or being dependent on. They have a fear of losing the partner, and there tends to be a lot of mistrust that they display. So they may be questioning their partner. Are you cheating on me? Are you lying to me? These kinds of things that happen. And this comes from often growing up in a family where there was some kind of trauma, or one of the parents was completely unavailable. They just felt like they could never get the love and attention they needed from that partner. Or it could be things like alcohol or drug abuse that has impacted their inability to find a coping mechanism that works for them. Now, these 4 attachment styles, they're not, finite. Even if you have one attachment style as your dominant, you will still show traits of the others. The most secure anchor type of person still has insecurities. And people with a dominant insecure attachment style still have areas where they feel very secure and confident. They may show up very secure in friendships but struggle with romantic relationships. Now, what this looks like in relationships, if you've ever experienced what we call the cat and mouse relationship, where you feel like you're constantly trying to get your partner to engage and be in the relationship and they don't have time, or you feel like they're always, disengaging, or you're the one that's always having to run away, right? You feel like your partner's so needy and clingy. This is often the dynamic of the island wave connection. We call this the cat and mouse. One person chases, the other person runs. Once the other person runs, the person who chases eventually gives up, and then the person who is no longer being chased realizes they don't want to be alone, and they come back and they declare that they're going to be the perfect partner. This often plays out in an on-off relationship, and this can go on for years. So if you've ever experienced this type of relationship dynamic, it's worth to consider whether or not attachment has been at play. I have a quiz that I will link below this video that you can take to understand if perhaps one of these attachment styles has impacted your past relationships or maybe your current relationship. So I want to help everybody understand how this impacts relationships, but also to let you know that you can shift this. Your attachment style today is not set in stone. You can do things to actually reprogram what you believe about yourself to move to a more secure anchored style of attachment. And this is the core of the work that I do in helping people create better relationships, is understanding your attachment style and then learning how you can go and fix that so that you can become more settled in relationships, more trusting in relationships,